$3,000, that's a power scooter, and if an airline breaks yours, they don't get to pay you a baggage limit and call it settled. They owe you what you paid. Not a loophole, not a fight. Federal law sitting there for years, and it's one of 7 charges airlines can't legally put on travelers our age, and put on them anyway. Not because they're hidden, because a fee nobody questions is a fee that gets paid. So today, all 7, plus the one sentence that ends the argument at the desk. Seven, early boarding. Let's start with the one almost everybody pays without blinking. Priority boarding. $15, $25, sometimes more on a busy route, for the privilege of getting on before the crowd and finding room for your bag. Here's what the airline doesn't print next to that button. Under the Air Carrier Access Act, any passenger who needs extra time or assistance to board, to stow equipment, or to get settled in their seat is entitled to pre-board. No fee. You don't need a doctor's note. You don't need a wheelchair, and you don't need to explain your medical history to a stranger at a podium. You need to say so at the gate. That's it. And the same rule gives your collapsible walker or folding chair priority for the closet and the overhead bin over everything else that came aboard at that airport. So the $25 you paid for early boarding bought you something the law already handed you, plus a colored tag. Your defense? Skip the priority boarding upsell at checkout. Go to the gate podium about 10 minutes before boarding begins and self-identify. You don't have to name a diagnosis. Needing extra time is the whole requirement. If an agent pushes back, ask them to check their own carrier's pre-boarding policy. Magic phrase? I need additional time to board and get settled. I'd like to pre-board, please. That's one line off the bill. Now here's a charge that lands before you ever reach the airport. 6. Service dog fee. Book a flight with an animal and the site quotes you a pet fee. Around $100 each way is typical, and on some carriers more. But a trained service dog is not a pet, and the Department of Transportation has been explicit about it. A service animal, a dog, any breed, individually trained to do work or perform a task for a person with a disability, travels in the cabin at your feet, and the airline may not charge a fee for it. Not a pet fare, not a carrier fee, not a surcharge. There is paperwork, the DOT service animal form, and the airline is allowed to ask for it in advance. What it is not allowed to do is put a price on the floor space in front of your own seat. For anyone traveling with a guide dog, a hearing dog, or a medical alert dog, that's a couple of $100 a trip that quietly stopped being a rule years ago and carried on being a habit. Your defense. Download the DOT Service Animal Air Transportation form from transportation.gov. Never a third-party site that charges for it. Send it to the airline as far ahead as they ask for it. If a booking screen adds a pet fee to a service animal, stop and call. A phone agent can strip it out. Emotional support animals are a separate category and aren't covered by this. The rule is about trained service dogs. Magic phrase: this is a trained service dog, not a pet. Please remove the animal fee and note the DOT form on my reservation. So far, we've been talking about what happens on the ground. This next one is about the 20 inches you sit in. 5. The seat you need. Airlines have turned seat selection into a business. Aisle, bulkhead, extra leg room, $20, $40, $60 a leg, and they'll happily sell you the same seat twice on a round trip. Most of that is fair game, but there's a line in the regulation most travelers our age have never read. If you have a disability and you need a particular kind of seat because of it, an aisle seat with an armrest that lifts so you can transfer, a bulkhead row because a leg won't bend, a seat beside the person helping you, the airline is required to provide that seating accommodation. It's an accommodation, not an upgrade. You aren't entitled to first class, and you aren't entitled to 2 seats on 1 ticket. The rule is clear about that, and I'd rather tell you the limits than oversell it. But you should not be paying a premium to sit where your body requires you to sit. The catch is timing, and it's why most people miss it. You have to ask for it as an accommodation in advance through the airline's disability desk, not by clicking a paid seat map at 11 at night and hoping. Your defense: Call the airline's accessibility or special assistance line as soon as you book. That team can assign seats the website charges for. Describe the function, not the label. An aisle seat with a movable armrest. Do it at least a day ahead. Last-minute requests carry weaker protection. Take the agent's name and ask them to note it on the reservation. Magic phrase, I'm requesting a seating accommodation under the Air Carrier Access Act. I need an aisle seat with a movable armrest. Right, that's the seat sorted. Now, what you're allowed to carry into it. 4. Medical gear. This is the one that catches people at the gate, and the one I'd most like you to remember. Picture it. An agent is measuring bags and handing out fees for anything over the limit. You have a rolling case, a handbag, and a CPAP machine. By the airline's count, that's 3 items, and the third one is about to cost you. Except it isn't 3 items. Under federal rules, assistive devices do not count toward the carry-on limit. That covers a CPAP, a portable oxygen concentrator, a ventilator, a nebulizer, your prescription medication, and anything you need to administer it, a folding cane, and a collapsible wheelchair. None of it counts. And if you preboard, collapsible mobility equipment gets priority for the cabin closet over everybody else's bag from that airport. Your machine keeps you breathing at night. It is not a souvenir, and the regulation treats it that way even when a tired gate agent doesn't. Your defense, keep medical equipment in its own bag, obviously what it is. Don't bury a CPAP inside a suitcase. Say the words, assistive device at the gate, not my extra bag. Keep a screenshot of the airline's own accessibility page on your phone. It settles disputes fast. Preboard, that's what buys you the closet space before it's gone. Magic phrase, this is an assistive device. It doesn't count toward my carry-on allowance. Quick one before we carry on. Of the 4 so far, how many had you already been charged for? Put the number in the comments. I read them, and it tells me what to make next. There's also a free printable version of this whole list. Every fee, every phrase, large print, sized for a carry-on pocket. It's linked right below, and if this is useful, subscribing genuinely helps. Because 3 left, and one of them got quietly rewritten, then quietly paused, and almost every senior I talk to is still working off a version that isn't the current one. 3. Walkers and wheelchairs. Checked bag fees have crept up to $35, $40 a bag each way. And every year, travelers our age pay one of those to check a walker or a rollator because it went onto the belt like luggage and got billed like luggage. It isn't luggage. Wheelchairs, scooters, walkers, rollators, canes, and crutches travel free, and they sit outside your baggage allowance entirely. Checking a mobility aid doesn't use up your free bag, and it doesn't trigger a fee of its own. They also get priority handling. First off the aircraft and returned to you at the gate if that's where you handed it over, not on a carousel 3 terminals away. I'll be honest, this is the one I see go wrong most often, and it's almost never malice. It's usually a seasonal ramp worker nobody bothered to tell. Your defense, check mobility equipment at the gate rather than the ticket counter where you can. Shorter journey, fewer hands. Watch the receipt. If a bag fee lands against a mobility aid, get it removed before you walk away from the desk. Photograph the device from every side before you hand it over with the date showing. Take off and carry on anything detachable. Cushion, joystick, foot plates. Magic phrase, this is a mobility aid. It's carried free and it doesn't count against my baggage allowance. 2 left, both with real money attached. 2. The extra ticket. Here's a situation almost nobody knows the rule for. Occasionally, an airline decides a passenger can't fly alone, that, for safety reasons, somebody needs to travel with you. It's rare, and it usually comes up around evacuation, not medical care. Here's the part that matters. If you believe you can fly independently and the airline disagrees, the airline can still insist on a safety assistant. But if it insists, it cannot charge you for that person's transportation. Worth hearing twice because the instinct is to assume that if they require it, you buy it. You don't. The Department of Transportation put that in writing precisely so a safety judgment couldn't quietly turn into a second full fare. It's the difference between an airline making a call and an airline making a sale. Your defense. If you're told you need an assistant, Ask whether the airline is requiring it or recommending it. The word decides who pays. If they're requiring it against your judgment, say plainly that you're traveling independently and are being required to have an assistant. Ask for that determination in writing or noted on the reservation with the agent's name. Ask for the complaints resolution official at the airport. Every carrier has to have one reachable. Magic phrase: if the airline is requiring a safety assistant, you can't charge me for that person's transportation. Which brings us to the one with the most money attached, and the one nobody has told you the truth about. 1. When they break it. Back to that scooter. If an airline damages or loses a wheelchair or a scooter, the assumption most people carry is that you'll be handled like any passenger whose suitcase got crushed. Capped payout, depreciated value, a form, a shrug. That is not the rule, and for a great many people, it never was. Standard baggage liability limits do not apply to wheelchairs and assistive devices. Compensation is based on the original purchase price of the device, not what a used one fetches today. And an airline cannot ask you to sign away liability as a condition of carrying it. Those three have been on the books for years, and they're the ones I'd hang my hat on. Now, there's a newer set of rules that goes further still. Loaner chairs, paid for by the airline, while yours is repaired. A safe place to wait. A free rebooking if your chair didn't make the flight. And I want to be straight with you about where that actually stands, because I don't think anyone else is going to be. The department wrote those rules, and then paused enforcement on the mishandling parts while it reconsiders them. So the words are in the regulation. The enforcement, for the moment, isn't. Ask for every bit of it anyway. Plenty of airlines will still do it, asking costs you nothing, and a polite request at the desk has a way of finding the one supervisor who knows the policy. Just don't build your trip around it. And don't let anybody tell you the older protections disappeared along with it. They didn't. Those three are still live, still enforced, and still worth more than everything else on this list combined. Your defense. Don't leave the airport before filing a written report. Ask for the complaints resolution official by name. Photograph the damage straight away and produce your purchase documentation for the original price. Ask for a loaner that fits you, and if the one offered doesn't, say so plainly and ask again. Never sign a liability waiver for a mobility device. No airline is entitled to one. Keep every receipt. You can escalate to the Department of Transportation if the airline stalls. Magic phrase: this is a mishandled mobility device. I need the complaints resolution official and settlement at the original purchase price, not a baggage cap. So that's 7. And if you take one thing from all of it, make it this. Every one of those charges is published. None of them are buried in a footnote or hidden in fine print. They sit in federal regulation, in plain language, and the person at the counter can read them as easily as you can. The money doesn't leave your account because the rules are secret. It leaves because nobody expects a passenger our age to say the sentence. So here it is, the one that covers all 7. I'm traveling under the Air Carrier Access Act. Please check what applies to me before you charge me. That's the whole trick. Say it kindly, say it once, and watch how fast the conversation changes. Now, knowing what they can't charge you is only half of it, because there's a second list entirely. Travel costs the government has already paid for on your behalf, sitting there waiting on somebody to claim them. I pulled those together in the video beside this one. Go and collect them.